Hi guys, I have returned finally after a month of being absent, which was awful. I do want to explain to you guys, just in case you're curious of why I've been gone, but if you don't want to hear my explanation, you just want to get to the video, I will leave a timestamp in the description box so you can just get on to my summer wrap-up and you don't have to watch me talk if you don't want to. But for those of you who do want to know what's been going on, a lot has been going on. First of all, if the quality of my video looks different, it is because my computer is having some technical difficulties. I have a USB external port and it broke, so I can't import footage from my camera into my computer, so that's why I have to use my phone for the time being. Hopefully I'll be able to get another external port soon so I can go back to my regular quality, but honestly the iPhone quality isn't that bad, so it's good for now. Second of all, if you have seen my videos before, you may notice I'm in a different scenery. I did move, and that's the reason why I was gone for a month, because things just got so busy with moving that I could not focus on videos. Even though I tried to, I couldn't get the motivation to make any videos because I was so busy moving. So yeah, that sucked, but I did plan to come back right when I was settled into this new apartment, and now I'm pretty settled, so I am ready to come back and make more videos. Also, I finally have a bookshelf again, and I am so happy I have a bookshelf I can film in front of, because I lived in a studio with my mom, and it was so small and cramped that there was no way I could have a bookshelf, so I have one again, and it just looks so pretty. This bookshelf is only temporary. What I'm hoping to do is put shelves on the wall, like mount them, like all across the wall, and then put my books on them. But we have so many other stuff that we're doing that we can't focus on that right now, but hopefully that'll happen soon. So this is probably only going to be a temporary shelf, but it looks good for now, and I'm super happy about it. So now let's just get on to what this video is about. So summer is over. I think it's ending. Well, the first day of fall is, and I think it's on Friday. I can't quite remember, but I am so excited because if y'all watched me before, I always say how much I hate summer. Like, I hate it. So I am so glad that fall is coming. But with that being said, I am ready to wrap up my summer reading. So I have 12 books to share with you, and these 12 books are books that I read during this summer. And then at the end of this video, I'll let you know the top 5 books that I read this summer. And I did reread a lot of books this summer, and all of my rereads I loved, obviously, because I loved them the first time, so I love them enough to reread them again. But I'm not going to mention those books in my top 5 just because I want my top 5 just to be of books that I have read for the first time. So even though I gave my reread books 5 or 4 stars, I want my top 5 to be all books that I have read for the first time this summer. So let's just get started with the books I read. So starting with May. First book I read was Through the Woods, and I gave this 2 stars. Next I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and I gave this 5 stars. Then going into June, I read the sequel to ACOTAR, which is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, and I gave this 5 stars. Next I have P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han, and I gave this 4 stars. Next, I have The Problem with Forever by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I gave this 5 stars. Going into July, the first book I read was The Velveteen Rabbit, and I gave this 3 stars. Next, I have An Ember in the Ashes, and I gave this 4 stars. Next, I have Looking for Alaska by John Green, and I gave this 5 stars. Then I read Geekerella by Ashley Poston, and I gave this 4.5 stars. And the last book I read in July was Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard, and I gave this 3 stars. And lastly, going into August, the first book I read was A Court of Wings and Ruin, the third book in the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas, and I gave this 4 stars. And then I read Infinity by Jess Accardo, and I gave this 5 stars. So those are all the books that I read this summer. Now I'll show you my top 5 favorite books that I read during this season. So going in order from least favorite to most favorite, the first book I have is An Ember in the Ashes by Spa Tahir. I like this book a lot. It was something that I wasn't sure I was going to like in the beginning, but just because it's a fantasy and it's kind of known as like a real high fantasy book, but I didn't end up enjoying it. There were some problems I did have with it, mostly pertaining to the romantic relationships within the book that were really not well developed and I felt didn't even need to be there in the first place because they were so underdeveloped. But there were other parts that I did love. This is a very brutal book. A lot happens. It takes place in ancient Rome, which is probably the most scariest time in history. So I like how it took place in a historical setting like that, and there was a lot of good action scenes in it. But as I said, some parts of it were underdeveloped, but I still did really enjoy it, and I might pick up the sequel. I'm not quite sure yet if I'm interested in continuing but we'll just have to see. And coming in fourth place, I have P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han, and this is the sequel to the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy. I read To All the Boys I've Loved Before 2 years ago. Yes, 2 years ago. And I just now picked up the second book this summer. I did end up rereading To All the Boys I've Loved Before just to refresh my memory on it because I read it so long ago. And I love this book just as much as I loved the first book. These are very enjoyable books. They're not great, they're not the best work of fiction ever, but they are very enjoyable. And I felt like Laura Jean, the main character, grew so much in this book. In the first book, she was very immature, but she is gradually going through a lot of things that are helping her to mature. So I really enjoy seeing her character develop. I think this book has so many great characters in it, and I'm really looking forward to reading the third book, which I will be getting to this fall, and it will be on my fall TBR. And coming in third place is my most anticipated book of this year that I got to this summer because it came out in May, but I didn't get to it till August, so I put it off a lot. That book is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas, which is the third book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. I put this book off for so long just because it's so big. Even though I love this series to death, I at the time just wasn't ready to delve into a very deep, big book, so I put it off. But I finally got to it last month, and it was good. It's probably, though, my least favorite book in this series. I gave the first two books 5 stars. This one is a 4-star. I felt like there were a lot of issues in this book. First of all, there were some parts in this one that were just boring to me, and it kills me to say that because I love this series so much. It's one of my favorite series ever, but this one just had so many parts in it that I did not care about, and I was just like, when is the action happening? When is the real good stuff going to happen, like in the first 2 books? So that was a little disappointing, and also the climax of this book was really action-packed, but there were so many parts of it that were too, I guess I'd say, convenient and kind of anticlimactic in a way. Like, I felt like there were so many characters in this book that came out of the battle unscathed, which is so unrealistic because there was a huge war at the end of this book, and a lot of the characters just walked out of it completely fine. And I'm like, that is so unrealistic, and just, it didn't make me feel for the characters in that way. So there were a lot of problems I had with this book, but the romance in this book, amazing. Just as good as it was in the other 2 books. I think it is just so, oh, it's just so good. I absolutely love Feyre and Rhysand to death. I have now completely strayed away from Tamlin. Like, I love Tamlin in the first book. Like, I ship Tamlin and Feyre so bad, but he did not redeem himself in this book at all. So I can finally say that, like, Tamlin can just go away, and I'm all for Rhysand now. So I did really love this book. I did have problems with it, but I did still enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to getting to the companion novels in this series that will come out next year, and I'm really excited for them. Coming in second place, I have Geekerella by Ashley Poston. This is a Cinderella retelling in kind of a modern day setting. This book was just so much fun. It's about this girl, and she is a fan of this old TV show that is getting a reboot, but she absolutely despises the actor who is playing the lead role in the reboot, but they actually come in contact with each other and she doesn't know it's actually him who she hates. It's like, it reminds me, I've said before, I think, that it reminds me a lot of the book P.S. I Still Like You by Casey West, because it's about these two characters who are writing to each other but don't know who each other actually are, and they actually fall in love with each other even though they hate each other in real life. It was so much fun. It was so funny. It was really easy to read. It'll definitely be a reread of mine. I absolutely loved it and would highly recommend it if you are looking to read a fairy tale retelling in a modern day setting. This is a real good one. Okay, lastly, coming in first place is my favorite book I read this summer. I knew after I read this book that it was going to be my favorite I read this summer because it was, oh, it was so, so, so good, and it made me cry and just made me feel things. And that is The Problem with Forever by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I do have a review on this book, so if you want to see my in-depth thoughts of it, I will link it on the screen. But I absolutely adore this book so much. I originally picked it up at the library and then I didn't get to finish it, so I had to return it. And so after that, I just bought it online, and this is actually a library copy that I found on Amazon, so yeah. But I really love this book. It's about this girl who went through child abuse because she is a foster kid, but her foster parents were awful and they abused her. And she also lived with another kid there named Ryder, and they were best friends, but then they got split apart when the main character Mallory got taken out of that situation. And then she gets into high school. She starts her senior year of high school, and there she meets this boy Ryder who lived with her when she was a foster kid, and they reconnect and they have this cute relationship. It is such a moving book. This book has some real important themes that center around abuse and coming out of that strong and getting over it. And I love how these two characters really help each other move on from their past and not let their past define them, like due to the fact that they were abused. And the romance in this book is one of the best romances I have ever read about. It is so good. You definitely really feel for these two characters just because their romance is so well developed, which I really appreciate. So I love this book. I would highly recommend it. This is the first Jennifer L. Armentrout book I had ever read, and I definitely want to read more of her books. I know she's more of a sci-fi fantasy writer, and I think this is her first contemporary romance book. So I really do want to get into more of her fantasy books. So I will get to those soon just because I love this one so much, and of course I can see myself rereading it in the future because I just loved it so much. It was my favorite book I read this summer. So that was my summer wrap up and the top 5 books I read this summer. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and please let me know what was your favorite book you read this summer because I would really love to know. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be back really soon. This time, I promise, I'm not going to leave for another month again.